Paul Dragons, welcome to Tasty Humans. Thank you for coming along. For the sake of everyone watching, who are you and what do you do?
My name's Paul Hart, which is quite an apt name.
Why do I think it's Dragons?
Because that's my rugby team.
Oh, okay.
My rugby team would love that. I've been there 14 years, played 250 games. So if you want to name me after my rugby club, that's fine.
Do you know what? I'm going to have to speak to one of my managers because that's the I got sent for your
That's what's
number,
down in your
Paul
phone.
Dragons. I was going to ask you if that was actually your surname.
Of course it is. So no, Paul Hart, and the name is ironic or apt because I run a business which runs private events exclusive for singles to connect and meet other singles in Dubai.
Okay. So let's start with you when you were much younger. How did you grow up? Where are you from?
So I'm from the Midlands in the UK, from Staffordshire. I was there for 18 years. Lovely upbringing. Moved to study and play rugby in Worcester. So another part of the Midlands, but less brummy and more farmy, out in the sticks in Worcester. And I was there for many years before I started my expat journey, which took me to the States, Australia, back to the UK, and eventually the last 14 years in Dubai.
Whereabouts in the States were you?
New York.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, I had a season playing for New York, one of the rugby clubs in New York. So.
And when did you end up here then?
2010, 2011. So I'm 14 to 15 years in now. And yeah, this is obviously home now.
Fantastic. So, Mingle. How did this come about for you then?
So I actually became single and redundant, as many people did due to COVID.
Yeah.
So actually, the redundancy was due to COVID, nothing to do with being single. So I was obviously looking for a job. There wasn't a job being advertised on the planet or a company recruiting at that stage. I'm from quite an entrepreneurial background. I had my own agency for a good time and sold that back in 2015, 2017. So I was open to starting a new business or going back into the corporate world. So coming out of lockdown, I became single. I started going on dating apps for the first time in my life. Like many people, hated them. I'm sure we'll deep dive into the reasons why myself and most of the planet hate dating apps. But I decided that I hated dating apps, came off the dating apps, thought Dubai's got everything. I'm going to find a venue or a night that is tailored towards singles, actually meeting singles in real life. I'd been in lockdown like the rest of us for months, missed the human connectivity, the human element. Obviously wanted to meet somebody or people. Couldn't find it. Couldn't find an event that was tailored towards single people meeting in a nice, fun environment. So thought there's a gap in the market. Here we are 4 years later, 104 events, 3 retreats later, 5,000 guests have attended our events. The rest is history.
So how did you go about structuring the event?
So for me, I did quite a lot of market research and personal preference, and everybody I spoke to wanted to not only meet in person, but they wanted to be an environment where it wasn't awkward and, not too structured, but they really wanted an environment where you had half men and half women, where a big issue for ladies, in fact, in Dubai, is that the ratio of ladies to males stacked it in our favour in terms of being a man. Wonderful for being a man, but the feedback I get from many of the ladies that come to Mingle is when they go out to a non-Mingle event, they just see seas of ladies, seas of attractive groups of ladies everywhere, and a minority of men. Ladies' nights is probably part of the reason for that and the deals that ladies get, but I felt that starting Mingle, it was important that we, could ensure as a selling point, a unique selling point, that we'd have a ratio of 50% men, 50% ladies.
And how do you manage that? How do you make sure that hits every time?
Simply only sell a certain amount of tickets.
Okay.
And it's hard commercially because something else that surprises people often when I tell them, we're inundated with ladies who are organised and serious about meeting somebody, and we could sell a lot more tickets to ladies. but we actually hold back to ensure that ratio. So some of our events, we might have 250 people, like an event we had recently, all the way down to 40 people. But we always keep that ratio either exactly or very close to 50% men, 50% ladies.
And you do different versions of dating. You know, what different sort of versions, what different setups you actually have?
We have two classic concepts. So the original concept was like the single mingle, which is a lovely environment, a lovely venue. You know, we started at Blah Blah's, we've been at Media One, many of the outlets at Media One. We've been on West Palm Beach, O Beach more recently, many other fantastic outlets throughout Dubai. So we wanted to create a lovely environment for people, but without the structure. So number one concept is a singles mixer or single mingle. We have high number of single men, high number of single ladies, often really good F&B deals, some free flow for ladies, etc., etc. A DJ or some sort of entertainment. We just create a really nice environment, which is very similar to just going out at the weekend. However, the big difference is everybody in the room is single, and you've got a 50% ratio of males to females.
And you do the normal speed dating as well?
So our second concept is a fun version of speed dating. So a lot of people think back to the awkwardness of speed dating back in the days, probably back in our days, I'd imagine, where you'd have it's before mobile phones, you'd have a card, and you'd almost have a rating system, and there'd be a pen and a piece of paper on the table, and people were petrified, thinking, I hope I perform over the next 2 or 3 minutes in this conversation, or I'm going to get a cross, or do I get a tick? And the highs and lows of wondered if that person sort of liked me. So we have a very similar overarching structure, but without the awkwardness. So we would have an hour of mingling when people get to know each other, some free flow for ladies, F&B deals, some music, a cool venue. And then we would have an hour and a half of speed dating, which is where ladies sit down at a table with a number. The men sit down every 3 to 4 minutes. I'll rotate the men around. So ladies love that. It's a ladies' world, as I say, and we bring the men to them. So the men would move around. Logistically, that works as well, because ladies are normally in heels or are dressed to the nines. So getting up and down with the heels and the bags and everything else. So the men move around. And it's extremely popular because after an hour and a half, people are exhausted. They've had 20, 25, 30 dates. They've connected with a lot of people. Then we give them a break, we turn the music up, the drinks are flowing, and that night actually morphs into a single mingle. But the advantage of being that everybody's met everybody else. Yeah. So we take the awkwardness away of approaching somebody, and you don't even need to look keen as if you want to meet that person, because the name of the game and the structure of the session means that you have to meet everybody. So it just happens organically. As we say to people, if there's a connection during the speed dates, then you can go and follow up and have a more in-depth conversation with that person afterwards. If you miss that person or you're still shy afterwards, they contact us and we can actually make an introduction away from the event on the next day.
So after the 4 minutes, if someone says, oh yeah, like I'm feeling this, like do you say, okay, you got to wait until you've seen everybody, or do you allow them to just say, okay, you can?
No, we want, obviously, we charge for tickets, so we want everybody to have value first and foremost. We want everyone to meet everybody. But also we say, look, you've come to the speed dating or one of the general mingle events. We actually encourage people to talk to as many people as possible, which is wonderful because it's not awkward like it might be at a non-mingle event to end a conversation with somebody because you want to talk to somebody else. It's almost rude. You feel obliged. You might miss other opportunities. Or it might be a case of you want to politely, not reject, but end the conversation. At Mingle, that's just automatic because everybody's there to meet as many people as possible. And the speed dating is exactly the same. So we always say complete all your speed dates. And it could be that you connect with 2, 3, 5, 10 people out of the 30 dates. And that's wonderful because not every one of those will necessarily develop into whatever it's meant to be. So definitely we would say, even if you connect with the first person you meet, have the other 25, 29 dates, meet as many lovely people as possible.
And how's the feedback from the guests?
Wonderful. I mean, we started back in 2021 in the summer, just at the stage where you were still wearing a mask. Mm-hmm. But when you sat down and actually got to where you were going, you could take that mask off, but you had to be sat down. So to mingle, it was tricky because we had to sit people around and almost physically move them around, and they put their mask on as they moved to the next area. Obviously, it was key that we started off well. So we worked with Blah Blah, the record room there. So we had a good brand. And we had 100 people come to the first event. So we had 50 guys, 50 ladies. And of course, like anything, you do a good job and people tell other people. You do a bad job and they tell the world. So luckily we've done a good job.
100%.
We've done a good job, and that 100 people has evolved into over 5,000 tickets sold over a nearly 4-year period. Because we believe, we're really filling a gap in the market. We're bringing people to meet people in real life. I'm sure we'll deep dive in a moment, but we feel it's a real necessary service to offer. And people are having a good experience because they're telling other people, because other people are coming. And as I mentioned earlier, we've had an event within the last month. There was 250 people there, 125 men, 125 ladies. So it's continuing to grow.
Good. Very good. I think one thing I wanted to sort of circle back to is how you said about COVID, mm-hmm. and about how there was this, obviously everyone knows this, moment in life that was quite bizarre, that everybody just was told to not socialize. Now, mm-hmm. I myself have had a career watching people socialize and developing scenarios, atmosphere, clubs, bars, restaurants where people do that. And how much did you see let's say, I don't know, I'm thinking of the right word, just erosion of human contact, and how much that you think is such an important thing in what you do?
It's very, very, very interesting question. Again, going back to the reason I started Mingle, and from a personal point of view, I had that thirst of human connectivity. I've always been a people person. My background was in talent, HR, recruitment. So I've always been in people, as it were, within that industry. And for me, lockdown was almost debilitating because you kind of take that away from people. And I'm quite an extrovert and confident, so obviously I missed the interaction with people. But imagine not being confident, imagine being an introvert. It put people kind of in a safe space, as it were, mm-hmm. but that's not necessarily good. So what Mingle really allows people to do is to come out of their comfort zone, out of their shell, and actually meet people. And Dubai is this huge, thriving social city, but it can be actually very, very lonely.
Yeah.
Because it's so huge, so vast, and so spread out. And it's very different to when people live at home and they bump into the same people at the same bar, the same pub, same supermarket, same clubs, same schools, whatever, same workplace. It's so spread out that you can become just a number in the nearly 4 million population here. So Mingle, for me, and for the obvious success of the early events, was because people wanted that human connectivity, and they didn't want to stare at another Zoom screen, and they didn't want to do another family quiz. They actually wanted to get out, and especially if you're single, imagine for months and months and months really not being able to have that human connectivity.
I think I couldn't think of anything worse, because I'm the type of person that has always loved, look at what I do now with the podcast. I love talking to people. I've always loved talking to people. I've especially enjoyed, again, watching people socialize and watch them enjoying themselves. And I think that here, during COVID, we were locked down for about 2 months, which I thought they managed it very, very well. And I lost my job. I was made redundant. I was lucky to start working with a training company, and then I got to sort of oversee the build of a restaurant, which was great. But very quickly, it came back with social distancing, and it got back to normal relatively quickly. Now, in the UK, for instance, I think it was almost a year where people were locked down and essentially couldn't do anything. And there's a lot of me that thinks about how the tech companies and how that's when I think everybody went into their screens, like you said, Zoom screens and everything like this. Everything became online. Everyone's being given a screen. Kids are being given screens and everything like this. I know we're going to go there, so let's go there. Do you know what I mean?
Let's do it.
Which is the dating apps. What's your view?
Okay, so I believe dating apps are a necessary evil, or certainly perceived as a necessary evil, because people now believe that's the only way to connect. People are on their phones all day long. I'm sure we'll talk about, the mental health angle of that. But the fact of the matter is, dating apps are not set up to help people meet other people.
Yeah.
Dating apps are set up to sell advertising space. In order to sell advertising space, you need as many people as possible on your app for as long as possible. I mean, one staggering stat was Bumble announced a couple of years ago now that the average time that their members were on Bumble was 90 minutes a day. And that's the average. Some people more, obviously some people less. But that's staggering, because that's just one dating app. Imagine being on several dating apps. Then you add your own other social media. Then you add your work emails and any other viewing. And, when are people not on their phones if they're that long? So, a huge part of what we do with Mingle is get people off their phones.
What are Bumble's numbers? You say that they're members. What's their UAE membership? Do you think or know?
I wouldn't know. I wouldn't know. Again, I mean, we're an anti-dating app, so ask me about events facts here. I do know that obviously they're huge businesses globally. I know that the key dating apps here are Tinder, Hinge, and Bumble. They're still.
I've never heard of Hinge.
Yeah, it's just another.
It's just I don't use any of them. I've never been on them.
Packaged in a different way. There are a few more local dating apps that have popped up, and of course we keep an eye on these because, in a way, it's competition. But we're such an anti-dating app business that we don't get bogged down in the figures. We know those alarming stats, and we also know that the whole point of dating apps is to sell advertising space. But unfortunately, that lends itself to almost a change in dating behavior and a change the way that we perceive people. And for example, Tinder were absolutely genius back in the day, coming up with the swipe concept, which we all know is, it's synonymous and world famous with Tinder, and many of the apps follow that. The issue with that is that subliminally that's how we perceive making connections now. So, with a Tinder, for example, set up to keep you on the dating app to sell advertising space, they need hundreds, thousands, tens of hundreds of thousands of people for you to be able to swipe. So because of that, you might see a profile and think, oh, potentially this could be the kind of person that I could invest some time and some effort in, possibly even meet, God forbid, meet that person in real life. And maybe you'll, like or match or message that person, but maybe the grass is on the greener and I'll just swipe one more time. And then you might enter a conversation with the first said person and it might develop, but you might not invest that time to actually go and meet that person, because what about if there's somebody else? So you swipe and that continues. And that's how people, I believe, and this is based not on my opinion, but the opinion of the 5,000 plus guests that we've had at our events. People are kind of viewing dating and meeting people full stop, but romantically as almost, the swiping process. There's always possibly somebody else, and Dubai is now synonymous with that sort of process where people are less willing to commit and put the effort in with one person and see where that might turn out, and spend that time to dig below the surface. And it's almost that first glance, oh, not sure we swipe, where pre-dating apps back in the day, you would spend some time digging deep, digging below the surface, and maybe that's where the connection comes in.
Well, I think when you say about digging below the surface, I mean, you're 100% correct in the fact that it used to be difficult, to meet people, in the sense of you go to a bar, go to a club, go down to the pub. A guy, I was quite shy as a teenager. I was always blessed with being able to talk, and I was always a bit funny. So I could sort of get my sort of inroad was to try and make a girl laugh, which was most of the time being really stupid, this sort of thing. But then, of course, you kind of, you get to a point with it where now it becomes a bit realer and a bit more genuine, and you would slowly, like you say, start to find out who they are and what their interest was and everything like this. But it can be inherently, what's the right way to sort of say it? Which is, it's about our attention spans. Yeah. Which is, if we didn't have dating apps, but if I was wearing a T-shirt that said, "Hi, I'm Sam, I'm this age, I like this music, I like these films, I like this thing," you're already giving somebody a reason to say no, because of maybe one of those things. But what they don't realize is they might like that if they get to know you and you expose people to different things. We were speaking about this before we started recording. Yeah. I think, I think a good question is how do you see how the dating apps affect people that are in relationships? So you found someone on a dating app, but when do you put it down?
This is the issue. Imagine before dating apps, or imagine in a world without dating apps, that you start to, see somebody or go on dates with somebody or have conversations that lead to dates with somebody. Imagine finishing that date and then going on another date and another date and another date. Yeah, like that would be seen as pretty shit thing to do. I'd say, where access to a dating app means that a date can finish, and unless you delete your profile and come off the dates, which people are really hesitant to do, because what about if they miss another opportunity, which is the whole like green is always grass, so let's swipe concept. People would remain on those dating apps. It's also a huge downfall of relationships that are potential relationships that are in their infancy, and even secured, established relationships, and God forbid even marriages and long-term relationships. Because if somebody, your friend, sees, that your boyfriend or the person you're starting to see, or your husband or whatever, on a dating app, then you can imagine the shitstorm that follows there. But when do you come off the dating apps? Is after a first date too soon? Do you keep your options open? So again, it's all very toxic and it's all very negative, because it leads, and then do you come off the dating app? Because if I come off, what about if the person I'm starting to date is still on there? But what about if I miss that opportunity? And sadly, that comes from dating apps just giving you a constant. Well, the paranoia must be.
Like I said, I've never used them. And one thing, I had a lovely woman on here called Charlie Spurway that's a relationship coach. I'm not sure if you're...
Yeah, I listened to the podcast, yeah.
Yeah, and one thing I said there is, not everyone has this, and I find it bizarre, but I have quite a hectic internal monologue. There's a whole other person in here going on at me all the time type thing. And so I definitely suffer and have suffered from, having an argument with my partner and then continuing that argument with them in my head, for a foreseeable time until I can calm down. And I often think with dating apps, something that could be wildly toxic is that you would meet somebody, like I say, out somewhere at a social event. So pick it, sports club, bar, restaurant, everything else. You get to know them, you see them for a few months, then you have what everyone loves, the labels. So everyone, you have your first argument, you know what I mean? Yeah. And it's a belter, but you end up sort of staying over at that person's house, whatever the circumstances are. They go to sleep. You're still angry. I'm gonna. This is it. I'm going like this. Yeah. What you didn't have, is you didn't have the ability to, pick up a device and go straight back down to the area where you met them. And I think that it's one of these things where it promotes you. Like you say, looking at the green grass, and here it is like, yeah, go on, I'm annoyed with this person, so I'm going to look for somebody else. And what if you actually see it? Yeah. Because everything's very visual and the interests are there. And then you're like, and then they ping you, and then all of us, it's like, it's breaking everyone up.
Yeah, it's absolutely right. I mean, when we didn't have access to dating apps, and even access to social media. I think Facebook came in about 2004, 2005.
Yeah, about that.
And that was labelled divorce book at one stage, because again, it gave people who were from a provincial town in the north of England, or the eastern suburbs of Sydney or Timbuktu, it gave people the opportunity to have more connectivity with more people. It started off with connect with your old schoolmates. I wonder what, that fit girl from school, or the handsome guy, or the sporty guy, or whatever, the, lead guitarist in the school band or whatever, wonder what he or she are doing now. So it gave you that connectivity, but also opened you up to the world, really, because these things spread like fire. So social media gives you, maybe it's just subconsciously, or maybe it's a fact. It gives you access to far more people than you ever had. Where you're right, think of the options, and I'm not saying what's right or wrong here, but just think of the options pre-dating apps or pre-social media. You have that argument, your options really are to fix the gaps in that relationship. Take a moment and fix that and work forward, or the relationship finishes and you start again. And you become single, and in time, when you've healed, etc., then you go meet somebody else organically, however that would look. That may, for some people, might now take a long time. We have many people come to Mingle events that have been single for a large period of time. And of course, there are thousands of reasons, but back in the day, you didn't have those options. Where from late 2000s onwards, now we're, as you've said, your phone's often in your pocket, so you're less than half a meter away from what could potentially be thousands of other options.
Yeah, and it must be it must be, like I said, dating just must be a very different space to the dating I was always used to. One of the other things I think that dating apps are particularly dangerous for is rejection.
Yeah.
I listened to a very interesting piece between a podcast discussing how dating is affecting men, and how the rise of how women have become very self-sufficient. They've become very successful. They're, as we know what's happened since the Me Too movement and everything this, which has a lot of justification behind it, but it's how men have started to sort of lose a bit of purpose and how that's affecting. There's a incredible Netflix show that I mentioned to you earlier called Adolescence, which I won't sort of wax lyrical about it. Everyone should watch it. I'm not sure if I agree 100% with all the messaging in it. However, the two people I watched discussing it were talking about how on dating apps, the average guy is swiping something like 100 times just to get a date, and how difficult it's becoming because of the way these things are set up, where I think one woman said that American women are putting in a minimum height of 6 feet, and that's wiping out 70% of the men on there straight away.
Yeah.
How do you feel about the the sort of preloaded interests and everything like that.
Yeah, I've got quite a strong opinion on this. I really don't believe in profiling. And in fact, at the Mingle events, we don't profile. And we often have people say, I'm coming to this event, how'd you profile? And we go, we don't. And the reason we don't profile is because many of the best relationships that I know, people in relationships would never profile. Because if you think about profiling, you've got, especially on a dating app, dating apps want to move quickly to get you to pay for something or commit to something. Going back to the reason we said earlier about subscribing, staying on there, all leading to ad revenue generation. So they want minimal clicks, minimum barriers to entry. So they want quickly for you to go tick, 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 these are my interests. Tick, 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 this is what I'm looking for in somebody. Tick, 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 this is maybe an age bracket or so and so forth. Boom, that's your profile. The issue with profiling is that you can tick every single box on there. You can meet that person, which you probably won't through a dating app for all the reasons I've said. But let's say you were to meet that person and you might have no spark, there might be no chemistry, no compatibility, no electricity. I can keep going on with the terms, but you just might not click. Where if you were to meet somebody in an organic environment such as Mingle, where you might have 50 to 100 guys, 50 to 100 ladies. So think of the volume of people that you're going to have exposure to in real life. You might click with somebody, and then later you realize that that person was out of your age bracket, or that person was from a different country, or that person was from a different religion maybe, or that person doesn't like paddle tennis, or that person doesn't like going to the gym. I also believe opposites attract. So isn't it nice to have different interests and different strengths, etc. So I think, apart from probably having a similar moral compass, I think that's kind of important. I think if someone has a different set of morals, that could be, a deal breaker. I don't see any other, character trait or interest as an issue. So we actually put people in a room, and we've had enormous success. I mean, how do you measure success? I actually measure success by people mingling and making friends. And if it's romantic, great. But we have big groups of friends that go out socially, that haven't connected in a romantic way. There might be a load of girls, a load of guys, mix whatever, but they met and they realized that I don't have any other single friends, you're single, and I'd like to go out with somebody, or you just have something in common. But if you want to look at pure stats, 12 engagements, 4 of which are due to be married later this year. I'll be going to
Awesome.
I'll be going to one of them, which is wonderful. Hundreds of relationships. Hundreds of romantic relationships, whether they're still together or not, thousands of friendships. So that's how I measure success as far as mingling is concerned. Majority of those would never have met through a dating app because they're different profiles, different ages. The height things are classic. If you connect with somebody and click with them and have a connectivity and like them, find each other funny, and the electricity and whatever, maybe that 6 foot could become 5'10". Do you know what I mean? Or maybe that, I want someone within 10 years of me, and you meet someone that's 12 years older and you'd have never met them.
Exactly.
So, and it could be that person's really young at heart and you're really, old at heart or whatever. And we don't believe in that. And I think that dating apps really pigeonhole people, because it also makes you think about, the profile you're looking for, instead from being open-minded and going and relying on human connectivity as we do prior to dating apps and obviously at the Mingle events. You're then pigeonholed, because then you go on a date or you meet somebody and you're like, oh, this is my profile. You've almost told yourself, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy, because you've told yourself you want someone over 6 foot, or you've told yourself you don't want somebody over the age of 40 because you're 34, for example. And it's almost like you're telling yourself, and you subliminally you might believe that. So, again, that makes people close-minded. I will have to say one thing about dating apps with the aesthetics as well, because there's photos, and often it's, guys with their tops off, or ladies in bikinis, or whatever it is. It's made us very, I think, generationally, it's made us very, very visual. It's all about the aesthetics. And again, that's the beauty of speed dating, because you're going to have to meet by signing up everybody, whether they walk to the table and you think that's not my type, or, you know, aesthetically, and then you connect with that person. You go, well, actually, I don't mind that it doesn't have blonde hair and blue eyes. I quite like the, you know, the fact that it's dark, or whatever it is. Where on a dating app, and because we move quickly, because again, the grass is always greener and there are thousands of profiles, you know, it's, you know, quite attractive, but not, you know, there's probably more attractive people out there, if that makes sense. But we also know that so many, particularly out here, so many profiles are fake.
Yep.
Filters, catfishing. We need to come on to ghosting later as well.
Catfishing is hectic. Do you know what I mean?
Let's do catfishing, but let's circle back to ghosting.
We're good. We're going to do, okay, so we'll do ghosting. But there is one thing I think is that with the putting in all of your requirements and everything like this, I think one thing that I thought for a long time, this is actually based on my side of the aisle with the restaurant business and everything like this, is TripAdvisor, right? Is that everybody wants to know everything about what they're about to do before they do it, which I think is really dangerous.
Yeah.
And another, a hardcore passion of mine is movies, and it always has been. Like, and I used to love, you know, 20 odd years ago, you get Empire magazine, you'd read about it, that's it, you had to go see it. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? But now, and of course, I know everyone, I'm going to look at the camera, I know what you're going to say, which is, it's up to me what I look at on YouTube. Of course, I don't have to look at this. But you get the trailer, you get the breakdown of the trailer, you get people's opinions of the trailer, you get, did you hear this about it? Did you hear that about it? Then it's, then you get to hear that person said this on Instagram, and now, and before you even go into the film, or you go to the restaurant, or you meet the person, you have built up this whole thing in your head about what you are now convinced it's going to be like. And the minute it doesn't happen, and I think where it comes with human to human, which I think is so important, is that when I go and I want to be entertained, the minute I'm not being entertained, I get a real sinking feeling. You know, like everyone's done it. You go and see a movie, it's the sequel, 10 minutes in, you're thinking, oh my God, this is shit. Yeah. But I think when it comes to people, everyone really is looking for love, and they're looking for maybe affection, or they're looking for a physical partner or something. And if you have a predetermined, you're setting yourself up for failure, basically, instead of slowly letting something take over. And I really wanted to, it's a bit of a rant, but I wanted to get that off my chest, because people need to leave it alone and go and experience it, and then let it all just...
Yeah. I'm glad you got that off your chest. I hope you feel better.
I do.
And I'm with you. I'm with you on this, because everything you've mentioned is completely subjective. Yeah. It's down to somebody's opinion. It might not be your opinion. But also, we have to remember that if we're absorbing that information from social media, this beautiful algorithm that's completely personalized towards you is going to give you the information that they think you want. Yes. So, you know, if you follow a certain or have exposure to a certain political opinion, all it's going to do, the algorithm's going to circle back, and it's going to reinforce that, where before this personalization of social media, we used to get, you know, conflicting opinions, and you could come up with more of a rounded opinion perhaps, or you get like this holistic approach towards anything. You might see other options, etc. Where now a beautiful algorithm's telling you what they think you want to hear, and reinforcing something, and doesn't really give you exposure to everything, because they want to keep you on there, of course. So they think, you know, they're giving you what you want, and so on and so forth. And
they're not giving you what you need.
No,
that's the difference. There's a big difference between what you want and what you need.
Yeah. What's interesting with what you said and with Mingle, at Mingle, you don't know who's going.
Yeah.
We're not sharing profiles. We're not telling you anything.
I think that's awesome. Yeah.
And you walk in there, it's not a blind date, because that might be awkward. It's just a load of people are there for kind of the same reason. Open-minded, single, nice environment to meet people. If they meet a friend, great. If they meet somebody more, more sort of romantically involved, wonderful as well. Like, we really manage expectations. Don't come looking for the engagement on the first date, as it were, or the first mingle. But yes, it's really interesting, because as you've said with the TripAdvisor, you know, I went, this is probably, you know, on a tangent, but a good example. I went on a holiday last October, and somebody was organising it. It was for their for their birthday. It was all organised. We were all told to be, you know, where to go, blah, blah. I knew which country I was going to and what visa I was going to get. I didn't even know the name of the town. I didn't know the name of the hotel. I didn't know what we were doing. And I was busy, so I didn't care. I just knew it was happening. I was going for a reason. I wasn't going because I really wanted to go to the place, or I really like swimming with turtles, or I really wanted to go to the, you know, Sri Lanka. It was the first time I'd been there, blah, blah, blah. And it was all organised, and the person nailed it, of course. But I absolutely love that, because when I saw the place for the first time, I mean, hand on heart, it's the most wonderful venue I've ever seen. It is connected because I now take Mingle Sri Lankan retreats there, so we run single retreats there. So there is a connection here somewhere to my waffle. But you know, I saw that for the first time, and I saw that I hadn't looked at the reviews. I hadn't even seen a photo of the place. I didn't even know the name of the on the visa. You just needed to put the region, so they gave us the region name. I didn't even know, you know, how we were going to get there, and you know, we ended up going in tuk-tuks to get there. It's in the middle of the jungle. It was fantastic. But again, that was wonderful because I experienced something through my own eyes.
Yeah.
I didn't have any perceived ideas. I didn't have anybody else's opinion. My phone wasn't telling me what it thought I wanted to feel about something. And that's the beauty of our events. You don't know who you're getting. You just go there with an open mind. And as you've said, you get the opportunity to connect. But then, you know, you can dig a little bit deeper. And although it might just be a 5-hour event or a 4-hour or 6-hour, whatever, or our retreats, 3 or 4 days, think of how deep you get below the surface compared to a swipe. Yeah. When you look quickly, you know, you might not even look at their profile if you don't immediately like the look of their photo.
Which is why a lot of photos will be filtered and fake.
Exactly. And I understand why people have a little touch up there and whatever, or put a photo from 10 years ago. I get that, because it's like
10 years ago. Yeah.
Sometimes more.
But you know, the thing is about that is that you got to look something like the person.
Yeah,
you know
I mean, you really should. And look, I understand why people do it. I'm not the people doing this, you know, the catfishing to an extent, or the people, you know, it's like enhancing a CV. Like, you know, you're doing it to get your foot in the door for an interview. Where on a dating app, you're doing it to get your foot in the door, to get a match, to get a conversation that can lead to something. You can enhance
your CV, but you still need to be able to do the job.
Yeah, well, this is it, and be look a little bit like the person that can do the job. But again, you know, it just promotes probably bad behaviours, where if you go and meet somebody, there's no filter in real life. It's just you connect with somebody or you don't. And if you do connect with somebody, you can dig deeper than the surface in one night or one long weekend if it's the retreat. And then you've already met that person in real life. It's funny to see people meet in real life and then circle back through connections on social media. Surely that's the way it should be. Then you're connected. You know, you shouldn't make that opinion based on a in real life, you know, scenario.
No, and you shouldn't, and we'll go to the ghosting. Do you know what I mean? Because you shouldn't spend too much time building a relationship through messaging. You do need to see the person, but you were passionate about ghosting. Yeah. So expand on the ghosting thing.
Yeah, I mean, again, dating apps, social media, a combination of social media and dating apps have made it very, very easy to ghost. And I'm sure people know ghosting means you're talking to somebody and suddenly, or seeing somebody and suddenly it stops. You disappear like a ghost. And you couldn't do that back in the day, because you were meeting that people. You know, you had to go and any dating, you go and, you know, knock on their door and meet their, you know, big brother that would threaten you or whatever, or you'd have mutual friends, or you'd be introduced organically. You wouldn't be meeting someone from another town or another country.
It was difficult to meet a stranger.
Exactly. And don't get me wrong, there are huge advantages of, you know, I'm an expat living over here, so like I you know, don't want to be sort of, you know, cramped in my local town, as it were, just with a few hundred people to meet. You know, it's a lovely big world. But, you know, this ghosting thing is down to dating apps and social media, because it's easy if you're talking to somebody just to stop talking to them and block them or just disappear. Where at our events, or when you're meeting somebody in real life, you can actually have an adult conversation and kind of, you could eyeball that person if, and if the relationship was to end. And there's absolutely no pressure or fear of rejection needed at our events, because everybody's there to meet as many people as they can. And we stress that. We have a team to make introductions, the speed dating. Obviously, you meet lots of people and you have a conversation with someone for 10 minutes. And it's almost unusual to stay talking to that person. Even if you have a connection, go and talk to other people and make other connections, because eventually the right connections, will flourish. But don't limit yourself. And people are paid for a ticket to go there. So, we say get as much value as possible, meet as many nice people as possible, and make as many sort of friends or more as you can. And because of that, if somebody's talking to somebody and the conversation's going well or not, they can say, it's been lovely talking to you, I'm going to go and mingle. And it's not seen as, where if you go to a non-mingle event, just a normal organic bar.
Yes, it could be considered as rude or something like
that.
Or
well, it's a rejection.
Yeah, it's a rejection. And rejection's harsh.
Yeah, it is.
In any walk of life.
It is. We try and alleviate to as much as possible the chance of rejection. Another thing that's terrifying is approaching people. The most confident people and the most extrovert people. It's still terrifying going to meet, a group of people. Out in the wild, as it were, at non-mingle events, you don't know whether that person's single. So again, that stops people approaching them. Or, they might go and talk to someone and go, that's absolutely lovely, my boyfriend's coming, or my husband's coming, or girlfriend's coming, or whatever. So we overcome that. But also, it's terrifying. So the way our events are set up, you're in a position where you're just meeting people organically. You don't need to pluck up the courage to go and ask somebody and worry about being rejected, or worry about having the courage to go and approach somebody. Our whole concepts do that for you.
Well, I do think that people underestimate how difficult it is to start a conversation with someone you don't know.
Yeah.
I've been to a lot of networking events, and I can't do it. I can sit here with someone I've met quite a few times, but be recorded, have a conversation, and then, because we're bouncing off each other and everything. But at a networking event, I can't do it. Yeah. I've been to them. Some of them, my current boss will kill me if he hears this. Some of them I've said I've gone to, and I've gone to them, and I've wandered around and walked out the door, because it is very, very tough, and again, dating apps is not the answer, because you're eliminating. You've got to get over that bit. So for you to have a mechanism set out that encourages it but softens the blow, it sounds like what you've put together is an environment that is understanding the tougher side of what needs to happen, but has all of the rules to the night to make it fun and to make it non-rejecting. And to make people walk out with a sense of, okay, like, I might not have got what I was looking for, but I've had a great time and I've met some really interesting people.
Yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right. The ratio is 50-50. The environment's relaxing. There's some structure to make it easy so you don't have to approach people. That's done for you, but there's not so much structure that you can't, show your personality. As far as an icebreaker is concerned, people are going, this is the first time you've been to a Mingle event. It's an icebreaker in itself. And it just gives people the chance in a more sort of deep aspect. It gets people off their phones. It's human interactivity. It can alleviate loneliness. It can give people the opportunity to form relationships, however they look, friendships or more. Gives people exposure to people of different cultures and environment, nationality, religions, whatever, however you want to look at it. But phones are off, and we have a phones are off rule for certainly during the speed dating, because
that's really good.
It's a bit rude otherwise. But isn't that wonderful to know you've got an hour or 2 hours or 4 hours, off your phone? How that's so much better.
But people
for your
might
brain.
Sit and go, no, really? Well, I can't look at my phone for an hour. It's like
they're too busy. I mean, they're literally too busy, because the dates go from one date to the other. Yeah. Before they know it, that hour and a half's gone, and they're exhausted because of all the.
They're great events. The ones that I've witnessed many of these in Media One. You can see, like, it's not a shameless plug. It's not. Everyone's having a good time. It really is good atmospheres, and especially the Mingle party. Do you know what I mean? Where there is no speed day, but everyone's. It's like it really is like the recreation of a really nice night in a nice bar where everyone is kind of connected through the fact that they are just going to meet one another. And I look around and I know from my line of work where if there's a good atmosphere or a bad atmosphere. In a bad atmosphere, you have to stand there and watch it because you're thinking, well, this could... Yeah. You might have to control this. Mingle is a really, 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 really genuinely nice experience.
Yeah, I mean, we're 103 events and we've only had, really, really positive, open-minded people attend. And, we have a team and we're there to make sure if someone's on their own or someone's in the corner or someone's on the phone or someone looks awkward or a group are not mingling, we go and make those introductions. Mm-hmm. But 90% of the time we just stand there going, wow, everyone's mingling. So you could be having, up to 250 people all talking. I mean, how long would it take you to form those relationships? I mean, the classic advertising we use, because it's absolutely bang on, is for speed dating. We're like, how long would it take you in Dubai to meet, organize, and go on 30 dates? And people respond going, I could never do that in a lifetime, or it'd take me years, or that would be exhausting, or how do you meet the people and how do you want to go on the dates and blah, blah, blah. It's one night with us. It's literally, you get that icebreaker dates with 30 people in one night. Of course, you're not going to connect with those 30, but you will do with a few, 1, 2, 3, and then you take it from there. And, we've done our job by then.
Well, this has been a fascinating conversation, and believe it or not, almost 50 minutes has gone by.
Wow, that has flown.
That has flown. I tell you what I wanted to do. I wanted to jump a little bit pre-Mingle.
Okay.
Because you said you used to have an agency and you're in HR and talent and everything.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to ask, have you always been the type of individual that kind of likes to, I don't want to say help people, but develop people?
Yeah, I think I'm just a sort of a classic networker. Mm-hmm. My sporting background was, rugby. Every rugby team I played for, I was lucky enough to captain, because again, I brought people together and brought people into that team environment. Only ever played team sports, no interest in individual sports, because who's there to consolidate you when it's not gone well, or who do you share the success with? In business, always in recruitment and then talent acquisition, which is effectively bringing people together.
Yes.
It's a job. It's a candidate and a client in that environment, but still you're matching a CV with a job description.
Yes.
And the soft skills are making sure that person fits the culture of the company, et cetera, et cetera. And that's just spilt over into Mingle. Even in my sort of personal life, I'm forever networking and putting people together, and people are like, oh, do you know somebody that could be this? And it's actually a pleasure of mine to go speak to this person, or why don't you meet this person? I've lost track of the amount of hundreds of groups that I set up for an hour, a WhatsApp group going, so-and-so meets so-and-so, so-and-so moans, so-and-so does this, so-and-so does this. I think you've got this in common. I'm leaving the group. Good luck. And, I've just been a networker, and it's in my DNA, I think.
And what do you think's coming up for Mingle then, or yourself, over the next, 5-6 years?
Really, really exciting times. So Mingle has evolved as from February this year into Mingle retreats. So we've spoken about the Mingle events, giving people the opportunity to meet the icebreaker and digging below the surface compared to on a screen and on a swipe and on a an aimless message. You get the chance, but we've taken that to the next step, and our retreats to Sri Lanka and now to the mountains in Ras Al Khaimah, which is coming up at the end of April. It gives people 2 or 3 days to connect even on a deeper level, because you'll see the person when they're tired, you'll see the person when they're exhausted hiking, you'll see the person when they're hungry, when they're with makeup, without makeup, when they're drunk, when they're not drunk, when they're hungover, when they're doing this, when they're doing that. You'll get to share lots of traveling. You'll get to experience new things together, so you can really dig deep, and that's how you form connections. So that the retreats are going to be a huge evolution for Mingle. We've recently launched Matched by Mingle, which is more of a matchmaking service. But again, even when we sit down with our matched clients, we say, look, we're going to talk about a profile, but we don't believe in profiling again. But what we are doing, we are digging a bit deeper in terms of suitability, and we're effectively putting people together in a one-on-one date which is obviously different to the speed dating where you've got, you meet a big room of people in one night. So Match by Mingle and the retreats is the evolution, but our bread and butter will always be our events. We launched last November in Abu Dhabi, so Abu Dhabi's growing nicely. Over 100 events in Dubai alone, so onwards and upwards.
Fantastic. And as I like to ask every guest that comes on, if there's one thing you wanna say, one piece of advice to the people out there looking for love, looking for relationships. I mean, what is the one thing you would say to them?
I would say put your phone down and meet people in real life, whether it's at Mingle or another environment that is in real life. Like, meet people in real life. Human connectivity is very, very good for your mental health.
Yes.
Whether it leads to something romantic, maybe you've already ticked the box and you're in a happy romantic relationship. Meeting people face to face without being on a phone is really good for the soul. It's really good for your heart. It's really good for your mental health. So I'd say phones down, meet people in real life.
Beautiful. Paul Hart, not dragons. I'm going to kill Alia. I am. She's going to say this. I'm going to go back and say, come on, man.
Imagine if dragons was my surname.
I thought it was. Do you know what?
It's cooler than Hart.
I thought it was, and it was going to be my first. Is that really your surname? Because I thought, what a cool surname. So, forgive me, but Paul Hart, thank you so much for coming on. I think it's fantastic insight, and I hope people, really can see through the dating app myth. Do you know what I mean?
Pleasure.
Best of luck to you. See you soon.
Thanks, mate. Take care.
Cheers.